Hello, it's your Commodore, Ty Coles, here with another Star Trek Discovery review. This is Season 2, Episode 8, If Memory Serves. This is an interesting episode because I honestly don't know how to feel about it. It starts with showing original footage from The Cage. Yes, the unaired Star Trek pilot made in 1964.
Making a forced landing, sir. It comes from the Commodore Star Group. Their co-pilots checked with a survey expedition. My name is Christopher Pike. Commander of the Space Vehicle Enterprise. Destination is the Commodore Star Group.
It felt weird seeing that to start off a Discovery show. I'm glad to finally see some original Trek, but it just doesn't feel right. What was from The Cage, and then trying to say, yes, this is the same Star Trek, even though it doesn't look anything like it. Okay, so they do that, and then we go from Jeffrey Hunter's Christopher Pike and transitions into Anthony Mount's Christopher Pike. I can see what they're trying to do, but it just doesn't look right. Oh, so they're trying to make it canon. Yes, great. We can finally put that debate to bed, that this is true Star Trek, even though it looks nothing like Star Trek. So we get Christopher Pike finally opening the show, which should have been done a long time ago, instead of Michael Burnham opening the damn show. So he says he's worried about his two officers, and he's not really used to throwing shade on a Starfleet organization, but he prays that Section 31 does not catch them. We then go to the Section 31 ship. I guess they finally got to watch some of my reviews at CBS, because we finally get to see different admirals instead of just Admiral Cromwell. So I'm going to give him a good thumbs up for that.
Stop the apprehended as soon as possible. Do not speak with the veterans. There's your evidence. Get another applicant with me.
I accept full responsibility.
We have Section 31 talking to the admirals, and Captain Giorgio is like, we got to exclude Discovery from the search because we don't want any personal stuff involved, and we need to find them before they do. So Captain Leland tells her to get a hold of Discovery and try to figure out a way to keep them where they are so we can go try to find them. So Giorgio contacts Discovery using the holograms. The holograms. Really? Are we still using the fucking holograms? Because that is one ridiculous, stupid thing that should never have been belonged in the freaking prequel to Star Trek. Okay, so he's telling Christopher Pike to look for the probe that he destroyed, or look for the fragments, because this might help them try to figure out what's happening with the Red Angel and the spots and all that stuff. We didn't have, after Giorgio's hologram left, we get to see a bit of a scene between Pike and Tyler, where Pike learns that those two used to be in a relationship, but no longer, and he's wondering if Tyler's able to handle it.
I apologize, Mr. Tyler, but I'm responsible for a lot of lives here. Your feelings could impact our mission.
And we finally cut to the shuttle. Spock kind of still looks like he's half awake, half out of it. Like when you wake up after a long night of drinking, that's what he looks like. So they are flying into the Talos system, which is restricted. I made a mistake in my previous video, and I called the restriction to go to Talos 4 as General Order 4. That is wrong. It's General Order 7. that getting out of the way, why the hell did they not bring up General Order 7? Okay, it's a restricted area, but shouldn't they know it's General Order 7 that you should not be going to Talos 4? We get the stats on Talos 4, which is very similar to what we all know about Talos 4, that it was a warp-capable species that almost destroyed itself from nuclear war, and that there's only a small group of inhabitants left. So they're flying to this Talos 4, and they run into a huge black hole, and Burnham's trying to veer off, trying to get out of there. Spock takes the controls from her and flies straight into the center of the black hole, where Burnham's freaking out, wondering what the hell he's doing, tries to wrestle the controls off of him, but does not. And so Spock continues to fly straight into the black hole, and we find out it's just an illusion to protect Talos 4. So we're now at Talos 4. Okay, then after our intro rolls, we go back to Discovery. We see Stamets and Colbert walking down the corridors, and we get some idle chit-chat between the two. Colbert still looks like he doesn't know what the hell is going on here. And he runs in, and he catches a glimpse of Tyler. And let's just say, it looked like there was some tension. Well, of course there would be tension, because the guy killed him. So now we're on Talos 4. It looks like Talos 4, which I am thankful for. And they get the stats of oxygen at nitrogen atmosphere. And it's a nice 24 degrees Celsius. So Burnham leaves the shuttle, and we get to see the blue plants that we all know. Unfortunately, it didn't give Burnham that much of a response as it did Spock. And then we see this female go into the shuttle, and it's Vina. One thing I could say is that they got a very attractive female to play the role of Vina. Much credit to the original Vina, Susan Oliver, and I honestly think she's even better looking in this episode than she did in the original. Burnham meets Vina for the first time. Vina introduces herself. She's a friend, I put friend in quotation marks, of Captain Christopher Pike, and she wonders if he's going to be coming back.
Criminal friend of Captain Christopher Pike. Is Chris, is he coming back as well? Amazing.
Interesting. So she gives him the coordinates to beam underground to meet the Telosians. So they beam underground, where they meet Vina again. So the Vina that they met in the shuttle must have been an illusion. And we first get to meet the Telosians. They're similar, but not similar to what they looked like in the cage. Yes, they got the specific, like the general feel of a Telosian, but they're not 100% what we've seen in the cage. They're, I think, maybe 25% different. They say that Spock's has met the Red Angel before, and that because he's now observing time as fluidic instead of linear, his logic has failed him, and if they don't help him realize it, he will go utterly insane. But they want something from Burnham. They want to have her memories of what caused her and Spock to lose their relationship. At first she was like, no. But then I guess Vina gave her a reason why to agree, and showcases the power of their illusion. And we get this, she reverts back to what her true identity.
This is how they found me after the crash. They gave me the choice.
one thing I gotta say about this. Normally, Star Trek Discovery has done very well in the visual effects and the aesthetics, but I honestly prefer the 1964 look of old Vina to what she looked like in this episode. So, after that, Burnham agrees, but she wants to see Spock's memories. So we go back in time to when Spock first saw the Red Angel, and he confirms it is human. And the first spotting of the Red Angel is when Michael Burnham ran away, and it showed him a vision of her dying.
That is when the angel first appeared to me. I thought it was a dream. A premonition. It showed me your death.
So this makes me want to believe that the one timeline we're watching now on Discovery is a completely different timeline, and that I think the way to correct this timeline is for Burnham to die. That is the linchpin that changed everything in Trek. This is what we're watching now in Discovery. The fact that Burnham died when she was a kid. This is why Spock never mentioned her in the original series. Why they don't have as much technology as they do now. Something about Burnham. So Spock used that vision to save Burnham. Then, years later, it dragged him to a faraway planet, and he mind melded with her, and for some reason he turned into Burnham. I guess it's Burnham reliving his memories, so that's why they're interjecting her into his position. So it gives her a thing of what he's been dealing with. And we see the end of life itself. We see Earth get blown up, and we see several other planets get blown up. We see, I believe, 3 other planets, and I believe those are the 3 other founding members of the Federation. There's Earth, blown up. Vulcan, I believe, gets blown up. Andor gets blown up, and Teller gets blown up. So, we get finally some words from Spock saying, "This is what I've been going through." Overall, that was a good scene. While that's going on Talos 4, on Discovery we have Pike deciding to go against Giorgio's orders and start looking for his missing crew members. And Tyler objects and saying, "No, we were ordered to stay here."
Both in hospital. You don't respond to Burnham. Giorgio made it pretty clear you were concentrating on collecting debris from the probe. We are.
And he's like, "Well, we're still doing it." And he has Tilly saying like, "We've found about a metric ton of material, and it's all shuttle. We have not found the probe." Quick cut to the android. So the audience remembers she was infected.
So far, we have reclaimed 1 metric ton of material, all of which is from your shuttle. There are no probe parts.
And then we get the other storyline that's happening on Discovery, which is the Stamets and Colburn relationship. It looks like Colburn is having a very hard time dealing with this and blows up on Stamets. And all that Stamets is trying to do is go back to normal, go back to the way things were. And Colburn doesn't want any of that.
Put together dinner in our quarters before. Just trying to help. I'll do anything. Just tell me how. I don't know what to do. You keep pushing me to feel something. You want me to just pick up where we left off as if nothing happened?
So we get another interesting scene with Pike and Tyler that they're talking about that they should abandon their search for Spock and Burnham. And that Tyler says we should trust Burnham to do it because Section 31 has eyes all over us.
I don't know if you believe 31 believes he's a killer. You may find the person, but you won't get the person. Section 31 is watching, not just Giorgio, but their whole operation. And if you're surprising,
and that Spock is a fugitive, wanted for murder, despite Pike still not believing him. A funny thing that maybe people didn't realize, but Captain Pike in this scene actually calls Spock Spunk.
not Spock.
Which is pretty funny because it's a bit of a throwback to the original episode, The Deadly Years, when McCoy called him that.
Quite possible, Doctor. Perhaps a sufficiently efficacious compound could be developed.
Well, don't just stand that jaw and spunk. You and Dr. Wallace get cracking.
Now we see Captain Pike after dealing with Tyler. He's walking down the corridors and Saru comes up to him and they find out that there's been messages leaving Discovery to an unknown location. So they're figuring out what the hell's happening here.
Someone on our ship accessed the transceiver array and sent out an encrypted, unauthorized subspace transmission. 3 of them, actually. Large burst petabytes of data. An unauthorized transmission? Where? Unknown, sir.
We then go back to Telos 4, and I think we have a ridiculously good scene between Spock and Burnham. It kind of starts off like your typical brother-sister relationship. I know I have a sister of my own. And some of the back and forth talking. Interesting question. Burnham says, so how's the spirit working for you? Oh, that was cringy. But as we go into the rest of the conversation, it starts going mediocrely. That Burnham believes it was her that saved Spock, but it was actually Spock's idea all along to get Burnham to take him there so she can realize what he's been seeing, because we need someone that knows Spock, that, or as Burnham puts it, a family member, knows what he's been going through.
See it that way. But it was I who brought you here to see what I'm seeing.
How does my seeing help you?
I required someone who had context of my timeline. Nothing.
So you required family.
We then learn that when Spock tried to make contact with the Red Angel, that he couldn't get through to it because of quantum. Yes, they actually bring up quantum in this. I think he said a quantum singularity. I'm not 100% sure, but it's quantum. But the thoughts he did get from it were human. Yes, human, which makes it more and more likely that the Red Angel is a future version of Michael Burnham. So the Telosians reappear with Vina, and I guess Vina is acting like their ambassador or their mediator. And Burnham goes back and looks at more of Spock's recent history, and we go back to when he committed himself to Starbase 5, and we see him drawing all over the floor, and the doctors and looks like two security guards come in, and the whole scene plays out, which proves that Spock was not a murderer. All he did was incapacitate him with the Vulcan neck pinch. And shortly after that, so Burnham's like, but I thought you were committing a murder. He's like, does it look like I committed murder here?
I think you stole my confirmation.
And we also find out in the scene that there was Section 31 agents on their way to that starbase.
Mr. Spock, leaving the big shore. There is Section 31 officers going to transfer you to a more specialized facility.
Section 31.
Your mind is in crisis.
So, again, it makes you believe that it was Section 31 that killed the people, and they're framing Spock just so they can get what's in Spock's mind. We then jump back to Discovery, where we see they're in the mess hall, and we get a very, very weird-ass view of the turbo lift with Colburn in it. He goes into the mess hall and he finds Tyler there, and he's like wondering where Volk is, and he wants to speak to Volk because it was Volk that killed him. A huge fight endures, and Commander Saru, who's there, says, let them be, let them fight it out, which is completely weird that he would let this do this. We'll find out later why.
This must be allowed to play out.
Sure about that?
So, after that incident that happened in the mess hall, Captain Pike talks to Saru and says, the reason why you let this happen is because of your evolved form. You wouldn't have let this happen when you still had your, what Nerdrotic calls, Defticles. And Pike says he's going to overlook this, but this should not be happening again. We got to be Starfleet and be proper. Be no longer dealing with stuff violently, but the uniform code of conduct.
Given the unusual nature of our circumstances, I'm going to overlook the incident, but this can't happen again. But please, make sure everyone's aware that we will not be settling our differences with violence, but with a uniform code of conduct.
Right after that, Pike goes back to his room, and Vina appears. Pike is in shock. He looks like he just seen a ghost. I love that.
This is right. As it needs to be. The delusion's ability to project illusions across spaces.
And he's like, what are you doing here? I thought I left you on Talos 4. We get the realization that the Telosians can use their mental powers to broadcast a transmission over a distance, but it's only limited, which brings credence to what happened during the Menagerie Part 1 and Part 2, when the Telosians would not show all of it at once, that their mental powers can't do that. So, but using these mental powers, they have Pike talk to Vina, and a bit of a looking, I enjoy this scene here. And they also have the Telosians recreate part of their cave in his room to talk to, or his office, to talk to Burnham and Spock, because they don't want Section 31 to find out where they are, and if they use normal transmissions, they would have easily found out where they were. And also, in this scene, it looks like Spock has recovered from whatever ailed him. Also, it looks like Vina and Pike still have strong feelings for each other, especially with Pike having for Vina. Just the way that they are acting around each other. Burnham states the obvious to Pike that Spock did not commit murder because she saw exactly what happened via his memories. We also learn another key bit, that the reason why Section 31 is after Spock and try to frame him for murder is because his memories of the future. They realize that everything is about to be destroyed.
Captain Leland, and he tried to use invasive Terran technology to rip his mind apart.
Why? Look at that one Spock. My memories are with you.
We then go back into the mess hall where we see these bots looking like they're cleaning the ship. So is this how the ships clean themselves, which we hear about in the Star Trek Next Generation episode, Up the Long Ladder?
That isn't necessary. The ship will clean itself.
Well, good for the bloody ship.
So we have Stamets and Colburn in the mess hall. Stamets is trying to make everything right, but Colburn wants none of it because he realized Stamets is just trying to make stuff how it was, and ignored the fact that Colburn was dead.
Would you please just move forward? Let me do the same.
So it looks like Colburn has dumped Stamets, is going to move out of his quarters. Just as that's happening, we get a black alert. So Stamets rushes to the spore drive so they can spore jump straight to Talos 4. We see this female beside Tilly talking to Captain Pike. Is this the unseen chief engineer? Because when you freeze frame it, it looks like she has 3 pips on her comm badge, which means she is a commander. When Captain Pike tells Stamets that they're spore jumping to Talos 4, the entire crew just stops and looks at him like he has 2 heads, and they say that it's in restricted space in the Alpha Quadrant. But yet, why the hell haven't you mentioned General Order 7? So the spore drive ends up failing, and I believe it's the android that did it because it was her that was trying to input the information, and it honestly then it backfires on him. Despite running multiple level 3 diagnostics on the spore drive, which is a moniker of what Geordi LaForge did whenever there was a problem.
Maybe we should run a level 3 diagnostic on all key systems.
Then Tyler comes on the bridge, and he's wondering why there's a black alert. And they're like saying, well, we gotta rescue Spock and burn him from Talos 4. And they point at him being the one that was the saboteur, because they found his command codes in the transmissions that were sent. And that they believe he was the one that sabotaged all this spore drive.
Someone must have stored my code.
And sabotage the spore drive.
You don't really think Commodore 71 to Section 31 has access to the base of non-launching attack. The data switch on me.
Despite the android being the one that was the last one to input anything into the spore drive. So they decide to put Tyler under arrest, or they threw him off the bridge, and they decided to go to Talos 4 with normal warp, but instead of going to Talos 4 right away, they decided to make a fake message saying that they're going to Starbase 11, which is only 2 light years away from Talos 4, and if you don't know what Starbase 11 is, it's the one where Christopher Pike ends up, and where all this information about Talos 4 comes from when we learn about all this during the menagerie. As they're going through warp, you see the Section 31 ship right behind them in the warp, and they're trying to tell them to stop what they're doing.
Last warning, Chris. Stand down.
So they both end up in orbit of Talos 4. Pike tries to beam up Spock and Burnham, and as well as Captain Leland tries to beam up Spock and Burnham, and they both have transporter locks on them at the same time. And Leland was trying to say, like, stop your transportation or else we're going to destroy them. So with some help from Vina, we have Captain Pike stop the transporter, and it looks like Burnham and Spock are with Section 31. But again, it was just a ploy by the Telosians.
Say goodbye, Spock.
Goodbye, Spock. What is this? Satellite.
And Burnham and Spock were actually on a shuttlecraft, and they make a rendezvous with Discovery.
Captain. Commander Super.
But how? Television projection. That's how. Greetings, Scott.
After that, they realize that they're the most wanted ship in the Federation, and Spock's idea is the most logical thing to do in our position is to run. So they leave Talos 4, and in a surprising thing, it looks like they actually did a proper warp jump and not a JJ-verse warp jump. So overall with this episode, like I said at the beginning, I am torn. It's we actually get a true connection with this episode to the Cage, which is the original pilot of Star Trek. But the problem is, it just doesn't fit. Because we got technology that should not be around back then with the holograms and the uniforms. And just the size of the ship in general. A lot of it doesn't fit. So is this the first step of them trying to make it fit? And I believe that they're going to actually there's a theory going around that they're going to destroy this timeline and go back, and they're going to start doing the series in what timeline we all know. And I believe that timeline is the one where Burnham is dead. Hence why we never hear about her. And I believe the future that Spock saw was resulting. Maybe Burnham became too powerful that the universe, the Federation had to be destroyed. But that's just my theory right now. Oh, and we find out what caused the rift between Spock and Burnham. And it was the most lackluster piece of crap I have ever seen. You know what happened? Because Michael Burnham told Spock off and said some bad word, called him some bad names. Essentially a half-breed, and that he should not focus on being a human. Really? That's what made Spock become 100% Vulcan? Is that what made Spock turn away from his human side? Was because Burnham said he doesn't belong, he's a freak, and he should not be, he has no heart, and that he's a half-breed. So all the names that McCoy called him in the original series is what, when Burnham said to him when he was a kid, is what made him what he is today. Other than that, it was a decent episode. I enjoyed it. I can't believe I said that. But for the most part, it was an enjoyable episode. And I believe it was the previous writers of this Star Trek Discovery that were the problem. Because since we've been watching episodes with the new group of people from behind the scenes, it's gotten more and more watchable. And it's starting to feel a bit more like Trek. So it's starting to give you a little bit of hope that, just a little bit, that they might be able to turn Discovery around and actually make something decent out of it. There's your review for If Memory Serves, Season 2, Episode 8 of Star Trek Discovery. This is your Commodore. Live long and prosper. Hailing frequencies closed. Thank you for watching the video from Commodore Ty. If you'd like to see more, please hit the like button, share, subscribe to the channel, and why not, when you're here, check out one of my other mini videos I've done. Live long and prosper. Hailing frequencies closed.